All right, Commissioner, you may now begin.
Did we lose Rick?
Yep, we can now begin.
Roy is on mute.
It looks like we lost Commissioner Nelson. Fran, do you want to kick off the meeting?
I would be hesitant to do that. I think
We can wait
was
for
Rick on a minute ago?
It was. So seems to.
He's joining. He's rejoining.
Okay, great. There we go.
Nice timing, Rick.
I apologize for having lost contact, but anyway, we're live. Good morning.
Yep.
This is the meeting of the Housing Opportunities Commission Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee. I'm Rick Nelson, Chair of the committee. Joining me are Fran Kelleher, Commissioner, member of the committee, Jeffrey Merkowitz, Commissioner, member of the committee, and the Chair of the commission, Roy Priest, and Kayleen Brown, the acting executive director, and a host of other staff. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of August 10th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved unanimously. The first item on the agenda, on the action items, is fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter budget to actual statements. And Cornelia, you want to start off, or how are we going to do this?
Good morning, commissioners and HOC staff, and hope everyone is doing well. We have 5 items on the agenda today. First is our fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter budget to actual statements. And Terry Fowler, our budget officer, is going to go ahead and walk us through that.
Thank you, Cornelia. Good morning, commissioners and staff. On page 8 of our packet, we can see that the agency ended the year with a net surplus of approximately $1.2 million, which equates to 0.44% of the total operating budget, or 0.67% of the adjusted operating budget when we exclude our bonds, grants, and housing assistance payments. The primary cause for the surplus was savings in various expense categories in the general fund. On page 8 and continuing to page 9, you'll see that the general fund ended the year with a deficit of approximately $1.1 million, which was a positive variance of $1.25 million when compared to the projected deficit of $2.3 million. As I mentioned, the primary cause for this was savings in expenses attributed to admin salaries and benefits, savings due to turnover and vacancy, coupled with savings in professional services, computer software, utility, and tenant services. In our bond.
Terry, can I just pause there real quickly to ask a question?
Sure.
Savings are always nice. I'm always a little concerned sometimes when they come at the expense of salary due to vacancies. And are there any concerns there? How are we doing with staffing? And is that causing any other issues?
We did have a large variance due to savings in benefits related to health costs. But a lot of the vacancies that were vacant were filled closer towards the end of the year. Perhaps if Patrick Mattingly is on, he may be able to address your question on vacancies overall better than I, but I do know that a lot of the positions were filled closer to the end of the year.
And
Is that-
I would add that in some instances, we've been able to use temporary staff until the cost of temporaries when compared to full-time staff, there's a differential there as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I think then since Patrick's probably not online, maybe for our next meeting, or even you can send a note in between, you can respond to Commissioner Merkowitz's question in terms of the impact of vacancies on the staff and work of the commission.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Continuing with our bond funds, both the multi and single family bond funds had savings in administrative accounts, primarily in legal and financial services. Those savings resulted in excess bond funds at year end that will be added to reduce the projected draws for FY22. On page 9 in Opportunity Housing, I want to preamble this with the second quarter budget amendment incorporated our projected impact due to COVID on rent receipts. And the bad debt expense at year end was approximately $3.3 million. The amended budget projected a higher bad debt expense. However, it was smaller due in part to higher allowance balances at the beginning of the year and slightly better performance during the spring. It is possible that those increased payments were the result of the additional stimulus payments and continued unemployment benefits coupled with tax refunds that individuals received in the spring. We did see a slight decline in the fourth quarter, and our total receivable balance at year end was $5.9 million. In addition, we did have the deferral of the county loan payments, which resulted in approximately $456,000 of lower debt service payments in the portfolio. In many cases throughout the portfolio, the savings in bad debt and/or debt service was offset by lower gross rents due to no rent increases, higher concessions and vacancies, and some overages in administrative and maintenance costs. On page 18 of the packet.
Before
Yeah.
you get to that, and I'm not sure whether it's here or later in the amendments, on the issue of bad debts, when do we get, or do we get any kind of reporting on what has been collected in the way of bad debts? There was a reference at one point to some collections that were better than anticipated. And I guess part of my question is, when we collect the bad debt, does that go toward rent, or does it go to reduce the amount that we have written off in the bad debt expense item?
So I think the bad debt, the difference that Terry was referring to in this instance was related to receivables. So receivables we already have that we were expecting it to be, we were expecting to be a higher receivable balance than it was.
Okay.
And the payments that I referred to were actually individuals paying more towards their rent charges. When that money comes in, it first goes to prior rents dues.
Okay, no, I remember having those conversations a few months ago. Okay.
Okay.
And I guess just while we're on the subject of rent, has there been any progress with receiving any payments from the county through the emergency rental assistance program?
So I can address that, and others can chime in. So we have received in total from the state and the county about $530,000. And if you give me 1 second, I can tell you exactly the breakdown between from HHS, we've got about 252,000, and from the state about 305,000.
And what do we request?
Oh, much more than that, closer to, I think, 4.5 million.
Is
So-
there any thought as to whether we would be receiving more in the future based on how
That's
they
the
came
hope.
up with those numbers?
That's the
You know,
hope.
are they taking seriously the fact that as the low income and moderate income housers in the county that we are holding a lot of the bad debt?
So, Carrie, I don't know if you want to elaborate. I know we have sent several letters to them and, requesting that, they send us as much as they can, given the circumstances. But I know that they've been very slow to process, and I know that, we're waiting, but we are starting to see some money come in.
Has that been the result of individual applications versus our request for essentially a bulk payment to cover multiple people?
I think it's both. It's both.
So the processing has been really slow, and in fact, on Friday when we checked, the county had only dispersed about 25% of the 59 million. So as Cornelia said, we've sent a letter to the county.
Yep, I saw that. You?
And I've placed a phone call and an email to the director of HHS, and I'm awaiting a response. Now, there is a risk that the county will lose a significant amount of funding due to expected clawback by the federal government. So we're hoping that it doesn't come to that. So I'll continue to press, and we'll continue to advocate with jointly with MHA. But it really doesn't look good. So unless something dramatic happens this week, it is a huge problem, or unless the federal government extends the time by which the funds are to be dispersed, it's likely that HOC won't get funded.
Or recognizes, if the federal government recognizes housing agencies as an entity for these funds in a way
Right.
that the individual application process is extremely onerous, both for the applicant, the individual applicant, and for organizations like ours that are housing many of them.
Right,
So-
but they've given jurisdictions the runway to disperse funds. So
Right, those decisions are made at the county level right now.
mhm.
So,
And so we're hoping something dramatic happens this week, and we'll keep you posted.
Okay, yeah, $5 million makes a big difference.
Makes a huge difference. And my strategy, if I do have an audience with the director, is to impress upon him to put the risk onto HOC for ensuring that duplicate payments aren't made. And if there are duplicate payments, we have a way to return such funds to the county. And that's the best we can do, because we have a way, the payments are made to the landlord, i.e. to HOC directly. So if individuals are paid, it goes directly to HOC. If HOC is paid as a result of a bulk application, we can reconcile and return any excess payments. So, I would ask to put the risk on HOC for ensuring that doesn't happen.
is that the concern of the county right now? I mean,
that is part of it. I think that's part of it. That's part of it. So we'll figure out, how to ensure that that there aren't any excess payments made to us. And I'm sure the nonprofit owners would try to do the same thing, or would work to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Has the council gotten involved at all?
I don't think directly, but they are aware of the situation, and I hope that they will this week as well.
The concern is a legitimate concern, but you're right that there are ways to address it. And so hopefully they will see that and work with us. It
Sure.
would be great. Thank you for your work on this effort.
Can we, in view of the potential problem that we face of a clawback by the feds, or I would suggest maybe you get together with the chair and discuss whether or not there's any one of the county, including the county executive, who he might contact on this issue.
Sure.
Not to disparage or discredit the efforts that you're undertaking, but this is a significant issue, and I think we need to hit it from all angles,
Okay,
including maybe having a conversation with members of the Fed committee.
okay. We'll just-
Karine, if I could just step in real quickly, I
Absolutely.
did want to note, and this is Tim Getzinger, Chief Development Funds Officer. At the last MHA meeting, we met with the county executive and brought to his attention that Prince George's County now accepts exactly what Commissioner Kelleher was saying, bulk applications, which makes the processing much more efficient, much more fast. Currently in Montgomery County, it's individual applications. So even if, let's say, Cider Mill had 100 applicants, they need to process those applications one by one rather than one application. So it is incredibly inefficient, but we did mention to the county executive that other jurisdictions are doing it. Their processing is much more smoother. The results have been much better, and that the county needs to enact these best practices, not at the end of this appropriation. They need to do it now because they need to get the money out now.
What was his response?
So the director of HHS, and HHS is actually administering the program, not the HCA, as you know,
Right.
said that he thought at the time that they were processing bulk applications, which is not accurate. And the county executive impressed upon him to come back to him this week with some sort of a plan to do that. Because, I mean, it's millions and millions of dollars that they can lose. There's tons at risk. And, you know, there's additional rental assistance that could be available.
Well, it's not really them losing it, though. It's us.
Exactly.
Well, it's
exactly
not,
right.
it's all of us. It's the county.
Right.
And that should be clear. It's not just about us
Right.
losing money. This is money, free money from the federal government that is coming to this county. And this county will lose that money if it is not distributed. It's not just about HOC.
And the other the other nonprofits are in the same boat.
Right.
I mean, it clearly is it would be a loss to the county in terms of serving the folks who need it, because any shortfalls have to be made up somewhere else from other resources of those entities.
And as we've pointed out in the past, the pain trickles down to the individuals whose credit
Absolutely.
ratings. You have a bunch of people whose credit ratings will be affected by this, which affects their employability going forward. So, I mean, there are very serious implications to not using these funds for the purposes that they were appropriated just because of a processing problem.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
if I could, I just want to piggyback on what Commissioner Kelleher is saying, and that's the fact that the impact is on the housing delivery industry in Montgomery County that serves the most need people in our community, and to lose this level of dollars is unconscionable. And
Right.
so I would certainly work with our executive director, and I will reach out to the county executive and anyone else I need to, because this is a serious matter that needs to be resolved very quickly.
Mhm.
And as you do that, keep in mind the comments that Commissioner Merkowitz made, that it isn't about HOC or any one individual organization.
Oh,
It
no.
is really, I mean, we know that, but I think that there are some who would view this as just a plea by the organizations to get money, and that is not the case.
No. It's on behalf of the people we're serving.
Absolutely.
Karen, what is the total amount of money that potentially the county could lose if this money is recaptured by the federal government?
So as of Friday, when we checked the portal, only about 25% had been distributed. So the number is about 45-ish million.
And seeing we are about 10% of that. So, I mean, you look at your 90% population is also being similarly impacted. It's just really.
And is the potential clawback the end of the fiscal year, which means
End of September.
end of September? So they
Wow.
need to get their stuff together
Right.
between now and next week.
Right. And just for the record, I just confirmed that we did submit bulk application for HOC. So in addition to the individuals who have submitted applications, we have submitted bulk application for funding.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, let's see, where were we?
Terry, I think.
Terry,
Yes, I'm here. We were about to talk about
Sorry.
our property performance, and I will just briefly discuss the variances. On page 18, that shows our development corporation properties, and cash flow for the first group of unrestricted properties was about 4.5 million, which is 560,000 lower than projected. Actual recognized cash flow is 4.4 million, or approximately 648,000 lower. The primary contributors were lower occupancy and rents coupled with higher concessions, vacancy, and bad debt at Alexander House. That was partially offset by the previously mentioned lower bad debt, coupled with some higher vacancy and concessions throughout the portfolio. On the restricted properties, the second group, the cash was 65,000 lower than budget. The main contributors were higher shortfall than was anticipated at Metro Point, offset by a lower shortfall at the RAD 6 properties. As a reminder, the shortfall at Metro Point is covered by a draw from the General Fund Operating Reserve, and the shortfall at the RAD 6 properties is covered by unrestricted cash in the remaining portfolio. On page 19, we have a similar chart for our opportunity housing properties. The unrestricted net cash flow from unrestricted properties was 3.6 million, or just under $1 million more than projected, and actual cash flow recognized was 3.2 million. Primarily, the variances here are due to the lower bad debt than anticipated in the budget amendment, offset by higher vacancy and concession and lower rents. On the restricted portfolio in the second section of the chart, cash flow was $2.1 million more than budgeted. And this is largely attributable to the inclusion of Bradley Crossing that was acquired at the beginning of June and will be in the upcoming budget amendment to incorporate a budget for the property into the fiscal 22 budget. Lower bad debt at Cider Mill, the receipt of vacant unit subsidies at Elizabeth House, and higher rents and lower vacancies at both Georgian Court and Stewarttown. And I'd be happy to address any questions you may have related to the properties.
are there any questions that members of the committee have that haven't been asked? Okay.
Okay, moving on to the public fund on page 21. Although we no longer have any public housing properties, there were some continued expenses at Emery Grove. And we also had the receipt of the vacant unit subsidies previously mentioned that flow into public housing and out of that into Elizabeth House in the pre-mentioned opportunity housing portfolio. For the voucher program on page 20, it had an overall shortfall of approximately $1.2 million. This was comprised of a shortfall in HAP, where the expenses were higher than the income received during fiscal year. And the reason we received lower income is HUD had us use the previously received income that had not been expended, which we refer to as our net restricted position or reserve. In the admin expenses, there was a surplus of approximately 2.2 million, which was comprised of savings in administrative expenses of approximately 638,000 and additional admin fees that came from three primary areas. We had a higher proration of 80% versus the budgeted 79%. As is typical, HUD does final reconciliations of the fees you are due, and that resulted in additional fees received in July and September of 2020. And we received additional fees to support the COVID-19 voucher funding that was received. It should be noted that this administrative surplus will be restricted to the fund for future admin costs. On page 14 of the packet, the recommendation for the $1.2 million surplus at year end is that 50%, or approximately 621,000, be restricted to the general fund operating reserve for future operational needs, and the remaining 50% be restricted to the Opportunity Housing Property Reserve to help replenish the reserve to fund shortfalls for capital that can be expected in this current and future budget season. Finally, on page 15, where we show the capital expenditures, there were several properties that exceeded their budget due to unanticipated physical needs and requirements from the state for the state rental portfolio. Many of the properties have sufficient reserves to cover their overages, and for those properties dependent on the Opportunity Housing Property Reserve, the total need did not exceed the authorized amount of approximately $740,000 for FY21. Where there are capital projects with a positive variance, those funds can be rolled forward to the next year for projects that have not been completed, and you will see a couple of those in the FY22 first quarter budget amendment. Finally, it is worth noting that staff is working to identify capital work that was done in the scattered site portfolio that is eligible for funding available from the County Capital Improvements or CIP program, and will request reimbursement from the county for these eligible expenses, which will reduce the dependence on either the property reserve or Opportunity Housing Property Reserve. That concludes the packet, and I'd be happy to address any questions you have.
Terry,
Yes.
Go ahead.
I had a question about the HAP, and there's a graph for HAP utilization later in the package.
Yes.
I would like to discuss that. If it's more appropriate later, just say so and we can discuss it there, but I don't want to move away from HAP without some questions about that.
If the questions relate to the chart and that utilization, I think it would be better in that packet, since that is not a packet that I prepare.
That's fine. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions of Terry? Well, thank you very much, Terry.
You are welcome.
The next item is the fourth quarter unaudited financial statement.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Nelson, and Eugenia Pascal, our controller, is going to walk us through that.
Good morning, commissioners. AJ, if we can go to page, I believe, 32. Overall, the agency ended the fiscal year 21 on a sound financial footing. HOC's total assets, excluding deferred outflows, increased by about $350 million, or 23% to $1.9 billion in fiscal year 21, from $1.5 billion in fiscal year 20.
billion? Are you saying billion or million?
billion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me go back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And that's all right. Thank you. With a corresponding increase in total liabilities of 336 million or 25%. The net position also increased by approximately 19 million from fiscal year 20, total of 215 million to 234 million in fiscal year 21. In 2021, a large number of transactions occurred and made significant impact on the agency's financial statements. During the year, several multifamily housing development bonds were issued for several properties. Banner Housing sold Bower Park Apartments to Bower Park Apartment Limited Partnership, and a tax-exempt multifamily housing development bond was issued to fund a mortgage loan to finance the acquisition, renovations, and lease up of the property. The proceeds received from the Bower Park closing mostly accounted for the increase in unrestricted cash and cash equivalents. Also, the seller note and sponsor loan contributed to the increase in mortgage loan receivable and the increase in net position. Stewarttown was acquired by HOC at Stewarttown Homes LLC, financed from the proceeds of an MHDB bond and LIHTC investor equity. This transaction contributed to an increase in bonds payable, an increase in corresponding receivable, and also from seller note and investment in real estate partnership, a decrease in capital assets. The net gain from the sale contributed to the increase in the net position. Holly Hall apartment was sold under a sale and leaseback agreement, which contributed to an increase in unrestricted cash and cash equivalents from the net sales proceeds, and a decrease in capital assets. The net gain from these sales also contributed to the increase in the net position. The Westside Shady Grove real estate mortgage and loan transaction was completed in 21. It utilizes MHDB bond, equity contribution from HOC and LIHTC investor and county loan, which contributed to an increase in the bonds payable, the corresponding mortgage receivable, and the restricted cash and cash equivalents. Bradley Boulevard property was acquired in FY21, which contributed to the increase in capital assets and mortgage loans payable. The Ambassador Building was demolished and the land was contributed as equity under the Wheaton Gateway Agreement. In addition, Westside Shady Grove and HOC at 11250 Verse Mill Road were transferred to discrete component unit. These transactions reduced the capital assets but increased HOC's investments in real estate partnership. The single-family bond fund activities contributed as well. The 2021 mortgage revenue bonds series ABC contributed to an increase in bonds payable and restricted cash and cash equivalents. The liquidity ratios decreased in FY21 mainly due to higher current debts under the multifamily bond fund attributed to the bond proceeds not yet drawn for Westside Shady Grove. In FY21, the current ratio was 1.98 and the quick ratio was 1.85 as compared to 3.94 current ratio and 3.55 quick ratio in FY20. If the West Side transaction is excluded, the current ratio would be better at 3.16 and the quick ratio would be 2.95 in FY21.
When are those bond proceeds going to be pulled down so that
They're pulled down over the life of the construction, so probably another year and a half or so.
Shady Grove?
Yes. The West Side Shady Grove, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're pulled down over the life.
Through 2020, 23.
Okay.
End of 22, yes. early
So
23.
the reality, I mean, even though we mentioned that as a factor in reducing the quick ratio and the current ratio, the implication is that could change. But the reality is that our ratios will be at the lower level for a while, which is not a problem, because if I'm not mistaken, we've had this discussion before.
We have, we were just trying to show the effects of the transaction.
But
Yes,
the 1.98 and the 185 is still satisfactory, and it's not
correct.
it's not a problem area. That's the point that I wanted to make.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners. AJ, let's go to page 33. The agency had a net income of about 19 million in FY21 as compared to a net loss of 16 million in FY20. If we exclude the capital contributions from Bower Park, unrealized gain or loss on investment under the single family and multifamily bond fund, gain on sale from Stewarttown and Holly Hall transactions, and transfer of Beers Mill equity, it will result in a net loss of 7.4 million in FY21, a decrease of 800,000 or about 10% improvement from a net loss of 8.1 million in FY20. This year's variance is mainly due to a combination of an increase in revenue and a decrease in expenses, including an increase in dwelling rental revenue, partially offset by bad debt expense, increase in housing assistance payments subsidy due to COVID-19, incoming portables, and new programs. The increase, however, in HAP revenue is lower, mainly due to excess funding from calendar year 20, which was held back by HUD against May HAP funding to reduce the reserve held by HOC. The decrease in Opportunity Housing Fund and General Fund administration and maintenance expenses also contributed to this variance. Also, the decrease in single-family bond fund interest expense due to scheduled and early bond redemptions. Decrease in pension and other post-employment benefits due to annual liability adjustment driven by an actuarial estimate provided by the county. This is partially offset by a decrease in investment income, largely due to low interest environment and a decrease in mortgage-backed security purchases. A decrease in interest income from mortgage and construction loans receivable due to lower average mortgage loan receivable balance in single family and also multifamily bond funds. Also an increase in HAP expense due to COVID-19 and new programs. And lastly, an increase in utilities in several Opportunity Housing properties and depreciation expense. That is all, commissioners. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Can we go back to page 31, which is the question that Fran Kelleher raised in the last, and can someone address the utilization?
Bonnie, are you prepared to address that?
Yes.
Okay,
Good,
thank you.
good morning, commissioners. Over the past, since April, we've actually called up 1,500 customers, applicants. We've had we've issued 339 vouchers. We received 613 responses. We have 93 RFTAs in-house. Our last call up was on August the 29th, and we called up 400 applicants. Our response rate prior to the pandemic had been at 70%. We're now at a 51% response rate. Our customers, our applicants are responding via mail, and we know that there's been a delay in mail, and they're also responding via email.
What's the current utilization?
The utilization currently is
91.5%. Is that
Pardon me?
yeah.
Is what?
91.91
This is just chart is as of June.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
right.
we have it as of August though. Bonnie, do you have the number as of August?
I think it just went down a few. We have 33 customers who actually leave the program monthly. That's our attrition rate, for a variety of reasons. And actually, I think we went down to 6,993, if I'm not correct.
What's the percentage, Bonnie?
Utilization.
At about 91%.
We're at 91%, that's
Yeah,
correct.
it's still at 91, but yeah.
Yeah, we're still at 91%.
A question I have, I understand that during COVID, the whole process, which is complex to begin with, is more complex because of the offices being closed and inability to meet with people face to face in order to move this along. I'm wondering, in the past, we've always said if you can't get buildings built fast enough because you need more people, is this an area where resources would help or a change in process would help? Can we have certain days, like a window of time on Saturday or Sunday where we can accept the application and documentation that we need in person somewhere? Or what would help with moving this forward? Calling up more people at the same time or having it be continuous instead of just batches? It seems to me that it is worth, given the difficult situation that a lot of people are in, to really think creatively about how we can move our use of these very sought after critical vouchers to a higher level.
I think we are actually calling up larger numbers than we typically have so that we can meet the demand. And we're reaching out to our customers by email, by phone, and using every mechanism possible to get the documents that we can in order to certify the customers. We also have some COVID waivers in place. So if there are documents that, they are unable to get because of, COVID related issues, that we're able to, let them certify.
Take attestation.
Yes, and let them and certify them. But our response rate, again, is not what it has been. Not sure if people are moving around and are not getting the mail. And, we're not getting that many packets back from the mail either. But we also all know that there is a delay with the Postal Service. So that could be part of our issue. But we do have 93 RFTAs in-house. We have issued 339 vouchers. We have 200 plus applicants that are currently on the street searching. We're going to do another call up. The last call up, which was on August the 29th, the packets were due back last week. And so they're still coming in. They come in via email and they come in via mail. Certainly we can discuss other avenues to get the documents that we need.
Okay, I would encourage you to think about that for two reasons. One, not only so that we can move back towards the 95% we like to be at for this, but also in the infrastructure bill, there was appropriated, as I understand it, about $89 billion nationally for additional vouchers, new voucher money to go out to housing agencies. And I'm aware that one of HUD's considerations in how it allocates those voucher funds is utilization that you are currently able to achieve with the voucher money you have. And I would hate for a temporary slip from our usual high numbers to result in us in any way getting less of this new voucher money, which would become a permanent support in the county to people who need it. So I'm not saying that anybody isn't doing a lot and isn't working hard. I'm simply challenging folks to think really creatively now about how we do this so that we can get back up to where we were and show HUD that we really are worth investing more of their voucher appropriation here in Montgomery County. We have a very long waiting list. It would be great to be able to whittle that down. I have said for a long time, we cannot build our way out of the need for affordable housing, given the number of people on our waiting list. We need to have a balanced approach with the vouchers and our building program. So I'm hoping we can do something. And if there's a way that the commission needs to support that something, please come back and let us know, but do see what we can figure out to try to get this back up.
You understood.
Thank you.
Following up on that, I mean, one of the things that I wonder is if the response rate is reducing or gone down, maybe we should just call up more.
Yes, we have. We have. Just on the 29th of August, we called up 400
As
applicants.
opposed to what we know, what do we normally call up when we?
We typically do call-ups because we have to be able to process the call-ups. So we typically do in April, we called up 400 applicants, in May 200, in June 300, in July 200, and we called up 400 in August. And we'll be doing another call-up within the next couple of weeks, but we also have to process the certifications as they come in. So
that gets to the point that Commissioner Kelleher raised. If there are additional resources that are needed to process that, then we ought to think about what those are, where they are, and whether or not we can get the additional resources that you might need.
Sure.
Just to
And
let you know, Carrie, were you going to talk?
I was going to say that we're looking and tapping into resources from other divisions,
Right.
folks that have experience with this type of work.
Great.
And in property management, there's some staff persons that are experienced and are interested in assisting, and so we're tapping into those resources for help. The temp market is sometimes not very strong, and so we're looking within to help out in the HRD area. So
And I recognize it's also not easy to quickly train people in this very complex thing. So I am glad to hear that you're looking inside for other resources. We certainly have a long enough waiting list to tap. So
absolutely. And I think Darcel was she's trying to speak, but her microphone is not working for some reason. I would also add that we're we've contracted to have kiosks installed in our customer service centers and also at Kensington, so that applicants can scan their information and submit them electronically quickly, so that we're not completely reliant on mail service. So that will help us to get information to us faster and hopefully more accurately. So we're using a number of resources to ensure that our clients are able to get information to us and that we're able to process them.
That's great.
All techniques that we are able to identify.
That's great. I would also say I'm a huge fan of feedback loops for improving businesses. Listen to what people who are not applying, if your response rate is going down, to the extent that you can, listen to why that is. I think there might be information out there that would be useful to us. I know it's hard, someone that doesn't respond is hard to get information from, but if you're getting any feedback, make sure that you pay attention to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time to go through that with us.
Sure.
Okay. The next item is, if I can find it.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm trying to
No
find
worries.
it on my.
So the next item on the agenda is the FY22 first quarter budget amendment.
Right.
And Tommy Adeba will walk us through that from the budget office.
Yes, okay, now I got it.
Tommy, are you there?
I apologize, I was muted.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead.
There we go. Good morning, Commissioners. The FY22 first quarter budget amendment includes amendments to the operating budget. In the general fund, we have the facility capital rollover of $255,000. That's $60,000 for East Air Park and $195,000 for 880 Bonifant. It also includes an information technology capital rollover of $63,580. Both rollovers will cover planned capital expenses that were not completed in fiscal 21. This amendment contains the award of $125,000 for the strengthening the implementation of responsible fatherhood program studies. As a result of the acquisition of Bradley Crossing, we are anticipating $192,960 in asset management fees to the general fund. In the Opportunity Housing Fund, we have added the budget for Bradley Crossing. Both income and expenses will increase by $1.7 million, of which cash flow is restricted. This amendment also includes the capital improvement budgets. We begin with the capital rollover for facilities of $195,000, a capital rollover for IT of $63,580, and a capital rollover for Opportunity Housing Fund properties totaling $432,374. That is $275,000 for Diamond Square, $138,534 for Metro Point, $5,742 for Strathmore Court Market, and $13,098 for Strathmore Affordable. And we are creating a capital budget for Bradley Crossing of $80,323. The net effect of the FY22 first quarter budget amendment is a surplus of $192,960. The adopted budget included a projected draw of $1.43 million from the GFOR to balance the budget. Staff recommends that the anticipated draw be decreased by $192,960 to $1.24 million in order to maintain a balanced budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions that members of the committee have? Then I would entertain a motion to recommend the amendment to the full commission.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it is unanimous. The next item is the uncollectible tenant account receivable.
Here you go, Rick.
Yes,
This is what you were asking for. Be careful what you ask for.
yeah, I know.
Thank you. So Nilu Rizigi, our accounting manager, will go ahead and walk us through that packet.
Good morning, commissioners and everyone. The agency's current policy is to provide for an allowance for bad debt on tenants receivable which have been outstanding for over 90 days. On a quarterly basis, the staff also recommends to the commission the write-off uncollected receivable from past tenants. The proposed write-off for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2021 amounted to $50,000, a decrease of $17,000 compared to the previous quarter. This period's write-off consists of $34,000 of bad debt from the Opportunity Housing properties, which were largely attributable to Camp Hill Square, NCI 160, Scattered Sites 1 Development Corporation, Sligo Development Corporation, and PDU 3 and VPC 2 Corporation. $15,000 from Supportive Housing Program, and about $1,000 from Waverly House LP RAD 6. The primary reason for the write-offs across the property include tenants who purchased homes, needed more space, passed away, skipped, no longer qualifies for the program, left due to lease violation, and voluntarily left the program. After the full commission's approval, the write-off will be processed through Yardi with the tenant detail placed into the debt database. The next anticipated write-off will be for the first quarter of fiscal year 22, which will cover July 1st to September 30th, 2021. If you have any question, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Question I have, and I'm not sure why I haven't asked this one before. Does Camp Hill Square still have a live-on manager? Or did that end a long time ago? Do you
Have
know?
a what manager, Rick?
On-site manager.
Oh.
They used to, for years, have a resident manager.
No, there's no on-site manager at Camp Hill.
Because I was just wondering why we are having the serious problems with Camp Hill. And same is true, I guess, in Washington Square. Okay. If there are no other questions, do I have a motion to submit this to the full commission?
I move that we submit the uncollectible tenant accounts receivable to the full commission for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The next item is adding a third signer to the bank accounts.
Good morning, Commissioners, and for the record, I'm Cornelia Kent, the Chief Financial Officer. As you know, the Commission has numerous banking accounts with numerous banking institutions, and with the recent departure of the Executive Director, we only have 2 authorized signers right now, the Chief Financial Officer and now the Acting Executive Director. So in an effort to avoid any delays in getting things signed and providing that people are available, making sure that folks are available, we're asking that we add the Human Resources Director as a signer to all of HOC's bank accounts. And I'm happy to answer any questions. This would make 3 signers in total, all members of the executive staff. We have in the past had up to 4 signers, so.
Now, this sounds perfectly normal. I would move that we add a third signer to the HOC bank accounts, naming the Director of Human Resources.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. And Jeff, we have made your
Just
deadline.
on time. So,
Okay,
thank you all.
Thank you all for your participation. And,
Thank you.
have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
You too.
You too. Bye-bye.
Is this meeting adjourned?
Yes, the meeting is, no more business, the meeting is hereby adjourned.